Sheil Kapadia has an article up over at The Ringer, and he is a very talented writer. He's always been a really good beat reporter. He at separate times for ESPN and The Athletic has covered the Seahawks and the Eagles. Very plugged in with what happens in Philly. We'll go to what we learned. It's what we learned about every NFC team this NFL offseason. And we'll go to the Cowboys specifically here in a sec. But I just want to quickly go over what we learned about each team, just the headlines from the NFC East. And you tell me if you can tell that he once covered the Eagles beat very closely.
Okay.
Cowboys, what we learned about them, they overreacted to their playoff loss. Giants, they're taking a gamble on Daniel Jones's upside. Washington, their ownership nightmare is close to being over. Philadelphia, they made a huge commitment to Jalen Hurts.
Oh, wow. Thanks.
That's a much softer delivery, softer approach for the Eagles there. But even so, I think Sheil's very, very good. And he has what I think is an interesting perspective on what we learned about the Cowboys. And I'm just going to read from this really quickly, and then we'll kind of react to it and discuss it. But he says they overreacted to the playoff loss. He says that the Cowboys were a very good team last year. Obviously, back-to-back years of 12-5, plus 125-point differential, third in the NFC behind only the Eagles and the 49ers. Should be a good team again this season. They made sensible trades with Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore. Didn't overreact to Dalton Schultz's market. Finally moved on from Ezekiel Elliott. Starts off with a lot of praise there. But he says the biggest change is going to be their offensive play calling. The Cowboys let Kellen Moore go, and head coach Mike McCarthy is now running the show. McCarthy indicated this offseason that he thinks the Cowboys can benefit from a more run-heavy approach that limits turnovers and puts games in the hands of his defense. McCarthy's comments demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding of what is actually wrong with the Dallas Cowboys.
Ooh.
Were turnovers an issue in 2022? At times, yes, but overall, not really. Cowboys turned the ball over on 10.8% of their possessions, which was slightly lower than the league average. Dak Prescott was intercepted on 3.8% of his passes, which was the worst mark among starters. Not all of his interceptions were his fault, though, and interceptions were not an issue for Prescott previously in his career. From 2019 to 2021, Prescott had the 9th lowest interception rate in the NFL. The bottom line, it's hard to envision a scenario where the move from Moore to McCarthy offers an upgrade. In 4 years with Moore, if we isolate the plays where Prescott was the quarterback, the Cowboys performed like the second best offense in the NFL in terms of EPA per play. Did the offense look bad in the playoff loss to the 49ers? No doubt. But that was one game on the road against the best defense in the NFL. Ideally, the Cowboys would have examined what went wrong in that game, made some tweaks, and moved forward. Instead, they made a big change that could result in a step back in 2023. And I got to say, reading this, the first person I thought of was Ralph James Choppy.
Oh, really?
Because this sounds like an RJ Choppy type of argument. Like, do not overreact to one game. Mm-hmm. In the grand scheme of things, it's easy to be bitter, and you know, when you're in it day to day, it's easy to rise and fall with the good and bad news about the Dallas Cowboys. But when you look at it from the 10,000-foot view, Kellen Moore was a good offensive coordinator who had a lot of success, and making this change was an overreaction.
Look, it was an overreaction, but it doesn't mean that it also wasn't the right move. Like, there's a solution and a problem. Like, was he the problem? That's the first thing I would ask myself. Is he the problem?
Kellen Moore?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The answer is no. It's like, okay, is he the solution? And if the answer is also no, you know, then it's not really, then it's not an overreaction. It's a move to make a move.
Yeah, but this usually goes to your point of you don't look at San Francisco's style. Are they reacting too much to San Francisco's style in terms of building their regular season team?
Yes. So
that's the question.
This is the problem that teams run into, right? So I'll just use this. I followed this guy as closely as anything, so this sticks into my head.
Oh, thank you.
When Peyton was on the Colts, all the other teams in the division tried to, oh, you know what? We have got to get a pass rusher.
Yeah.
Instead of, I don't know, finding a quarterback. So it's like you don't build your team to beat one team. That's a foolish way to do things. Yeah. The Cowboys ran into a unique style that punished them. You didn't need to change your toughness or your roster or your style because of San Francisco. You unluckily faced them in back-to-back years of the playoffs. Like, what are the odds of that? What are the odds that you face the same team 2 years in a row in the postseason?
I have an answer for all this.
Please.
Number one, I think the bigger question is, are you overreacting to San Francisco? Are you overreacting to Dak's picks? Which I think the three of us agree was a little fluky. All right, his career, he had never thrown more than 13 picks. He did that in 16 games. Now he threw 15 picks in 12 games. The guy takes care of the football. He's taking care of the football. So are you overreacting to that? To me, the reason why this is the right move, McCarthy being more conservative, running the ball more, building up the defense, it's not because of Dak Prescott's turnover problems. It's because of Dak Prescott's playmaking ceiling. That is the reason why I have advocated against the other two in the room to go more Parcells, more old school, more backwards. Because Dak Prescott is not a special enough quarterback, consistently special enough. He is capable of special moments. There's no doubt about it. He's not consistently, I don't know. Is a Jalen Brunson comparison fair to Dak Prescott or insulting? I think
that's interesting.
I think it's fair. Jalen Brunson as the one, I don't believe is going to win you the title. But, man, he can be dangerous. I mean, 38 and 48 minutes last night. But Dak in a playoff run, I do not trust to get you to or win the Super Bowl. And that is why I wanted the Cowboys to build up the defense, build up the lines, and win in a more balanced way. It's not an overreaction, in my opinion, to San Francisco. It's Mike McCarthy and the team front office saying, we know he's not going to throw us to the title. He's not going to be the reason. He can be a reason. So let's build everything else up around him.
I'm glad that we got to bring this up, by the way, because, and I know it's something we discussed a couple months ago, but it allows me, Sean, to reference something you've had in your prep email for about 4 months now.
the Cowboys offense
the
stuff?
Offensive numbers, which were the numbers that we researched right after the changeover, but it's good to have it right here in front of me. So thank you, Sean.
Yeah.
That ended up paying off here. In 12 years as the play caller in Green Bay, McCarthy's offense is ranked top 5 in points 7 times out of 12. They ranked top 10 in yards 9 times. They were top 10 in turnover differential 6 times. They were top 3 in point differential 5 times. So a lot of success. In fact, the year where he didn't call plays for most of the year, I think he took over at the very end in 2015. These were their ranks: 15th in points, 23 in yards, 10th in turnover differential, 11th in points differential, 19th in yards differential. For comparison, while Kellen Moore was here, they finished in the top 10 in point differential 3 out of his 4 years as offensive coordinator. They finished first in, or actually it was just raw points. Point differential, they finished same, top 10 3 times. Yards, they finished first in the NFL twice, and then they finished 11th and 14th. 14th was the year where Dak was out for most of the year, which I still think is a miracle. You finished 17th in points and 14th in yards that year that Dak went down is stunning with what they had around him. But generally, these resumes look somewhat similar in terms of being at the top of the league. Now, they do things very differently. And I think it's important to point out. I was going to say point.
Very important.
It's important. It's important.
Payne, I'll give you $100 if you tell me what that reference is.
Okay, it's a movie.
Sort of.
Is it 90s?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the movie was in the 90s.
All right, that's it.
Hang on,
it expired.
The movie could have been in the 90s, yeah.
All right.
If you think he's warm, then I'll give you.
He's not warm.
Let's try my best.
The Three Stooges.
Yeah, the movie, because the Three Stooges movie was like 90s.
What was the word? What was the word you just said?
Important.
I
was trying to say important to point out. It's important to point out that pick 2. It's important to point out that
so stupid.
Sheil Kapadia argues that this is an overreaction, moving on from Kellen Moore, yada yada yada. As Jane talked about last week, as we've talked about here on the show, as I've mentioned several times, the driving force for Kellen Moore's departure was Kellen Moore going in there and saying, I'm done. Kellen Moore wanted a new start.
Yeah.
And now what you could say is the blame game, the way things were handled, some of their overreactions to it potentially drove him to a point where he was like, I'd rather be somewhere else. But the fact of the matter is,
I heard he was fed up with McCarthy. I heard McCarthy kind of ticked him off with a final press conference of the year, and Kellen was ticked. That's what I heard.
Yeah, the issue
From
is,
reliable people.
is that much like in the Brady-Belichick breakup, Kellen Moore is easily going to win this. He went to the team that had the best quarterback with an opening at the time. Now, Mahomes finally had an opening with Bieniemy, but
that's Andy Reid's offense.
But the Cowboys are going to have a better record than the Chargers, most likely.
I would think so, but the Chargers' offense is going to be better than the Cowboys.
That's very possible.
I mean, at least they've got like Justin Herbert. Most people think he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. They've got a tier 1 guy.
Yeah,
he's coaching
a stud,
a borderline elite quarterback. You know, we don't know. I mean,
I think he's elite.
There's things he's got to do. I mean, he's got to sooner or later he's got to win some games. But he's pretty elite.
I think that as a defense for McCarthy, as a defense for the Cowboys approach,
Lamar, RJ attacks Lamar and you defend Mike?
Is that, and this is something that I think we've discussed, you could not go back into, you cannot go back into this season running things the same way. It had to be one person's vision. If it was going to be this hodgepodge again of Kellen and Mike and these different concepts, that was not going to work. You needed to commit to, this is Kellen's scheme. If you wanted Mike to have a bigger voice in the offense, if that's what the Joneses wanted, hey, Mike, we want you to have a bigger voice, we want you to be involved in this offense, then you needed to commit to Mike as your offensive coordinator. Because the concepts of the Air Coryell versus the West Coast system, there were going to be too many contradictions within them, and it caused too many issues, and I think you saw that. And so if they want him to have a bigger voice, then what they're saying is, we want you to run the offense. Whether they realize that or not, that's what they're asking. You can't have that hodgepodge. So to me, if that's what they wanted, you needed to commit to, in all likelihood, Mike calling plays. So either Mike calling plays, Kellen calling plays. It needed to be one or the other.